sir. You're about to see something really special.
Really thought this part of my life was behind me. Frenzy disappeared with the drinking 3 years ago. Why now? This makes no sense, and I'm right on the verge of freaking out.
Back from your life.
These people can be animals.
What you burn.
Thingy's out.
Some bitter things you should never
Good cheese.
learn. Wallow through the days.
Remember, cosplay's not consent.
So here's to me. Congratulations, me. Yay, me.
This would all be so much easier if I was hammered. Hammered.
Won't be there anymore. You can take away the anger, but you leave behind the pain. It's your soul I will
New ventures are always scary.
till I'm melting
Blah, blah, blah. Something positive and uplifting.
tomorrow. But the hurt will still remain. In your soul I'll live forever till I'm melting in.
Don't miss our new film, The Love Song of William H. Shaw, coming soon to a streaming service near you. Hey everyone, this is Cliff from Talking Pondo. Just wanted to give you a quick heads up about spoilers on the show. We do talk about the films in a certain amount of detail, so you may want to watch the film first and then come back if you're not a fan of spoilers. Also, every now and then there's a little bit of adult language, so we wanted to give you fair warning on that. We hope you enjoy the episode, and we really appreciate you listening. Welcome to Season 2 of Making Pondo and Talking Pondo. Talking Pondo is a podcast where Cliff and Marty give each other a film to watch and talk about them in detail. Some episodes will include a special guest. Making Pondo is a podcast where Cliff and Marty talk to people they have worked with and discuss their experiences on set. All right, Marty, looks like we're back.
We are back. Should really clear my throat before we hit record, but I like to save it for the beginning of the show.
That's our
we
intro
have-
music.
Yeah, that is the intro music. It's the theme song. You were saying you don't have a theme song. We do have a theme song. It doesn't have any lyrics.
It goes like this.
Oh, no, the lyrics are actually today on
right.
Talking Pondo. We blah, 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 blah. The little talk-up thing we do. Well, anyway, today it's Talking Pondo with guests. Yes, this is the first time we're trying to have 4 people on the show at once, so this should be fun.
Well, I could tell you right away, setup was easy. So that it didn't take long. Didn't take long at all to get everything started. That was good.
And so today we have 2 movies from Paramount Pictures.
Woo!
That might be the only thing they have in common. No, actually, I think there is a part in Friday the 13th, one of the movies we cover today, the 1981, not the 2009 one with the same name, where one of the actresses is doing a small Katharine Hepburn impersonation. For
God, you're right. Oh, Jesus,
so
you're right.
A little connection there.
Always find a way to connect these fucking movies. You're
That
right.
and also in The African Queen, our other movie from 1951, Jason might be living in the bottom of that water too, for all we know. Down there
Jason
with
Goes
the-
to Africa.
Yeah.
Friday the 13th, part
We haven't
12.
done it yet, so
I'd watch it.
So those are 2 films.
I watched
today.
him go to space, so I'd watch it. Yep. So Friday the 13th and The African Queen. And who are our guests today?
Our guests
Couple good ones for you folks.
Yes, from Bravo for the B-Side podcast. It's Jim and Danny.
Woohoo! Yeah.
Hello, everybody.
So Jim and Danny have been kind enough to have us on their podcast. They've reviewed our films. And through that, we've kind of gotten to know them, kind of become friends. And so we thought, who better to have on as guests than our friends? Plus, they're really into movies. These 2 people are super into movies. So this should hopefully be a pretty good discussion. I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I can't imagine that we, won't go off the rails at some point.
It's cool. I mean, it happens. The last one we did, it went off the rails, but then it sort of circled back and it all made sense, right? It was all, you'll have to figure out how to tie it into the whole conversation. That's the key, right?
Those are the best journeys. Circle. Yeah.
Well, again, thanks guys for coming on. We're big fans. Thanks so much for your loving reviews of the last two movies. It's obvious that you guys really enjoyed them.
Yeah.
You're welcome that we stuck your logo in our movie. Just gonna say that
Thank
now.
you.
Oh yes, thank you.
That's my favorite part. Is like Jim goes, full stop. I just had to say full stop. There's our logo in the background right there, and I was like, yes.
We had to wait so long to tell people about that, and
Oh yeah.
it's
Yeah.
it's a big deal for us because it's just like such a small thing on the screen, but you guys have so much going on putting a movie together, and for you guys and Jeff to be like, hey, let's put this up here, that's means a lot. Means a lot.
Yeah. Well, I was adamant that we should get it done. We should do it. It's a fun way to kind of, like you said, it's a fun way to kind of honor and sort of poke at people that you like and that type of stuff. We've got other art in the background of people that we like. We had Frank Powers on a little while ago, and he did Pissed Off Panda. You've seen some of the artwork, and he did
Yes.
Pissed Off Panda stuff. And so, yeah, it's a fun way to drop that stuff in.
I'm just glad you finally got to see it. And
Yeah,
that's the
same
movie,
here.
The Love Song of William H. Shaw. You'll be able to see it soon as well. And then you can spot where the Bravo for the B-side artwork is. Go into the movie looking for it in every little corner of the film until you eventually.
It's in several
It
scenes
is,
in the
it
movie, I
is.
think. Yeah, yeah.
It is.
Because
It's
we-
in a couple. It's pretty prominently displayed in at least one scene.
Yeah, we
Yeah.
put it right behind the counter, right?
Yeah.
Like right there.
Yeah.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
most of the front counter stuff is right there.
Yeah, we had,
So I think it shows up in like the Adams stuff, right? Like when Adams doing his
yeah, it's all in
his
the
front counter stuff.
comic store.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
we had so much stuff all over that store and comics. I remember I forgot about this until just now. I remember Eric and Jeff and Biscuit, for that matter, saying like, "Did you cover this area or this?" Because we want to make sure that that's in the movie somewhere, and we're just like, "Don't worry about it. We're shooting enough stuff in here that everything is going to get covered." But I wouldn't be surprised if a few items.
I think
probably
they still
didn't
complained.
get in,
Yeah.
'cause
I think they
you
still
just
complained
can't-
that we didn't get
you
everything.
can't just do a close up of something just to have
Yeah.
random
Yeah.
close up of it. It has to be organic to the story. But I think we did a pretty good job of covering it all. There might be some comics underneath the desk that weren't highlighted as much, but hey, what were they doing taping comics to the front of the desk?
I think I think we're probably the worst product placement people ever. Like, I mean, we probably
that's
shouldn't say
fine.
that. Like if if Coke gives us money, it's going to be like some dude quickly sipping out of a Coke for a second and putting it down, and that'll be, well, like, look, it's in the movie. Like, we put it in the movie. We're like, no, you got to prominently place the products, sir.
Well, that's why with your new distribution
Wayne's
deal,
World.
you got to put out like an art book.
Oh,
All the
you know,
artwork.
we've been talking about that. We've been talking about an art book. We've also been talking with them about possibly an actual physical box set release with all three
Oh,
movies.
nice.
Oh, that'd be cool.
Yeah. If we can get I really believe if we can get the hits and the movie can generate some click, some clicks online, that they'll be interested in that. So that was one of the first things the guy who signed us was talking about. He was like, I see a lot of potential here for a box set. I'm like, let's do this.
Yeah.
Because Jeff will knock that up, no problem. We'll have all the Blu-ray covers and all the box art cover ready to go at that point.
Oh, Jeff will have a great time doing that.
Yeah, he lives for that stuff. It's hilarious.
Yeah, and with the art book, like you were saying, that's the way that all the stuff that was only seen in the movie for half a second gets a second life, and people get a chance to actually see it. So
Yeah.
maybe we'll have a
Yeah,
small version
absolutely.
of that in the box set, but we're still pie in the skying about now.
We were talking about including a small one or like a small ash can of it, but also doing like a really nice print. If we can find a place that does a nice print on demand,
Yeah.
coffee table style, that would be really cool.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, you got to talk about all this, like, oh, if we do this, if it gets big enough to do this, if it gets big enough to do this, because then when it does get big enough to do this, then you're like, we know exactly what we want to do.
Yeah.
True. All right. Well, great. First off, again, thanks for coming on. We appreciate you letting us have you on. And what movie do you think you want to tackle first?
Oh yeah, that's right. We gave them Friday the 13th from our crazy list of pick a movie, and then they gave us from their list of movies was African Queen. So, which one do we want to do first?
Well, I don't know. Cliff's got that that shirt on. So we
Yeah,
got
we
the
wanna start
masked
with
Mad Man
Friday
from Mad
this-
Monster.
I do
Well,
have
look at our guy.
I do have my Jason shirt on for Mad Monster, so I mean,
Yeah.
I didn't put it on to be like, let's do Friday the 13th first, but you know,
Hey, Jason's barely in this movie, right? Let's Cliff, what is Friday the 13th from 1980?
Friday the 13th from 1980, a group of teenage camp counselors attempt to reopen an abandoned summer camp with a tragic past, but they're stalked by a mysterious, relentless killer. That's your basic log line, and your storyline is, in 1957, a young boy named Jason drowns in a lake camp near Camp Crystal Lake. Next year, 2 counselors are murdered. In 1980, a descendant of the original owners reopens Camp Crystal Lake with some counselors' help. The counselors get killed one by one by a mysterious person. Could it be Jason out for revenge?
No, it couldn't, because you wouldn't know who Jason is yet.
Right?
Jason's dead at the bottom of the lake, people. I watched a lot of supplemental materials about this movie after I watched it this week. And it does really kind of feel open-ended, right? Where the Carrie shock type ending, we do all sorts of spoilers here. If you haven't seen it, you got to watch it before you listen to the show, guys.
Yep.
Where at the end of the movie, Jason jumps out of the lake, where that was kind of tacked on as this extra scare ending to the movie. It does make it seem like they were leaving it open for more sequels, but every interview I watched basically said, we were just trying to keep the lights on. We had no idea this movie was going to explode the way it did. It was a little no-budget movie we made in Blairstown, New Jersey, of all places, and then Paramount picked it up, decided to go nationwide with it, with its distribution, and the thing just blew up. And so then the next thing you know, we're going to make part 2. And Sean Cunningham, the producer director, was like, how are you going to make part 2? Jason's dead, but don't worry about it. He said throughout the years, people have come up to him and said, I want to make a horror movie, but I want to leave it open-ended, because we got to set it up for a sequel. And he always tells them, just make your singular film. And if the movie's successful enough, you'll figure out a way to come up with an idea for part 2. And that's what they did here. But this is the first one where Halloween was big, and then they saw that and said, let's find a way to rip that off. And they did a very good job of it. So, so that was my first little rant there about it. This was also the first horror movie I ever saw as a kid all the way through. I must have been 6. I had a big fear of horror films, and one of my older sisters sat me down and had me watch this thing from beginning to end. And I did have trouble sleeping, seeing Mrs. Voorhees' head fly off over and over again in my nightmares. But the movie helped me realize, it's more of a magic show. It's sawing a person in half. It's not, real. Kevin Bacon's still alive,
Thank God, right?
Yeah. What a treasure. Yeah.
To me, this one does not feel like it's connected to the rest of the franchise at all.
No, it
doesn't. It does not feel like it feels like its own separate movie. And then they were like, all right, we're going to spin a franchise off of this. We're going to figure out a reason to drag this kid out of the fucking lake and reanimate him or whatever, and continue on with this series, right? Because we've killed Miss Voorhees. We can't do anything with that.
Yeah. Well, we were just talking about.
It doesn't feel connected to the rest of the series at all.
Friday the 13th makes every list of like those milestone moments in a genre, right? And Friday the 13th is hailed as the egg from which the modern slasher has evolved. Because we had Grindhouse stuff, we had all these other things before that. But when we were rewatching this, and every time I see it, I can't help but ask the question, why?
Yeah.
There really isn't anything groundbreaking in this, because there's a couple things like the scene where they use the same Jeep for the guy, one of the counselors, like, I got to run to town and get some shit. And he takes his Jeep, and then we see the Jeep with the top up, driving, and it's a different and we're supposed to think it's him.
He shows up in a fucking Jeep. They must have gotten paid by Jeep, like product.
I know, right? But I think the
color Jeep.
Yes.
The whole thing about this, I think it was time and place, because not too long prior to this, we had Halloween, which is a way different horror movie.
Right. But to me, that's the slasher that starts everything, in my opinion. I mean, People could argue
of that-
Chainsaw too, but
Yeah, I think of Halloween as more the horror thriller, in that it wasn't just jump scares, because they touched on some very things. The boogeyman, the whole, there was just something about him, and they had a baller cast. I mean, Jamie Lee Curtis, Donald Pleasance, and when Donald Pleasance looks at the screen and says, "All I saw in his eyes were evil," I mean, it creeped me the hell out, you know. But from Halloween, I think we had a bit of a segue from just brutal slashers, and then this thing showed up, and it's young kids, and it wasn't creepy so much as and just that hanging horror suspense of
that's the first sound you hear in the movie.
who's gonna get it?
First sound you hear in the
You
movie. Why did we ever trust a bunch of horny young 19-year-olds to watch over a camp full of kids? Was that like this is what the hell?
Well, nothing ever happened before, except
I guess not.
Except for that one kid dying.
Yeah, I just can't. And that's how it was back then. Back in the 60s and 70s, you'd go to a camp and then you'd graduate to being like a camp, not a counselor, but like a camp leader or whatever, and you'd come out for the summer and get paid to watch over these kids. It's like, oh my God. This movie, to me, I agree with you. I don't know why it's a prototypical slasher. I don't know why that they considered this one to be the mother of them all. I think Halloween is more geared towards that. I think maybe because this one has a bunch of young kids in it. So people, a lot of kids in the 70s and the 80s could identify with this movie. Going to camp was still a popular thing. Going to the lake was still a popular thing. It's not, I don't know kids that go to camp now. Do you know anybody who goes to camp?
No.
No. Yeah.
Not like that,
No, yeah, certainly not like that. Well, there's computer camp, there's math camp.
Right, but there's no just go to camp for archery and swimming and boating and get out of my parents' hair for 3 months.
Ernest went to camp.
That's true. That's true.
Well, I ate up horror movies as a kid, and I've watched this one, and it was never in my top favorite ones. And I didn't revisit it a whole lot.
I prefer 2 over this way more.
Oh, yeah. 2 is way better.
Yeah.
And as they get more unhinged as they go on, they're a lot of fun.
Jason in Space.
Yes, that's my favorite one.
Are you fucking kidding me?
Jason 10. When he turns into nanobots or something. It doesn't make sense. But it's like... Yeah. But this one, and I was talking to Jim about it, I'm like, this one is structured as a whodunit. The whole movie. But there is no way for you to puzzle out whodunit. They don't give you enough.
They don't give you any clues. Yeah,
they don't show her at all. Yeah,
it reminds me a bit of that. What's that movie with it was kind of the farce horror with the where you'd get it from the killer's perspective. It'd be huffing and puffing like
Student Bodies.
Student Bodies. Where it's that perspective from the killer, but yet the killer's not really hiding, because at one point the girl walks by this tree and the camera's 3 feet from behind the tree, just panning left to right. It's like nobody's hiding there.
Well, it's only the killer's point of view if you hear music, is what the composer said in one of the interviews I watched.
Okay.
When that arrow flies by at the beginning when she's setting up the archery, that one counselor, that's why there's no music sting there, because they want you to realize it's not the killer.
Got you.
Weird.
Yeah.
We explained to our daughter the timeline. So we've been talking about this for the podcast, and she hasn't seen any of these, and she's not interested, and that's fine. But we explained we went from this to number 2. And how this dead kid grew up, and then number 3 where they tried the 3D thing, and then that it wasn't until number 3 when we get the mask.
Yeah,
one thing that we know is Jason is that mask, and then the one with Corey Feldman and the New Blood and the last and all this, and Jason Takes Manhattan, and all these, and even she was at the end. She was like, "So how does that all come back to the first film?" And the answer is, well, it really doesn't, because it is kind of an outlier, and it just gave the idea, and then they just went each one a little bit more ridiculous, a little bit more gore, and it's endured, and I'm not going to complain about it, but
It definitely became about Jason, right?
Yeah.
Not about not about the camp or the counselors, the kids, or any of that. It was just about by 2, 3, and 4. You're like, this is just about Jason. How is he going to come back? How is he going to kill? How are they going to stop him again?
Yep.
That's why I think if they had never made a sequel and this had just been a singular work, it'd be a lot creepier because you just see that last shot where she's imagining the lake where she thought she got pulled in, but it's just like, oh shit, that woman snapped and killed all those people, and that's the end. And it's like that's kind of creepy just by itself, But you can't help but think, Jason's down in that lake somehow.
Do you think that these movies contributed to less and less hitchhiking? Seems like in these movies, it always seems like in these movies, some suckers just hitchhike. Hey, thanks, buddy, and then it's like Texas Chainsaw. What are the first thing that they do in Texas Chainsaw? Hey, let's give that poor dude a ride. Yeah. What do they get? They get cut on the hand, and they have to throw him out because he's freaking weird, And so, nice picture. And even this one, this poor girl's just trying to get to camp so she can cook for all these kids, and she gets, she's hitchhiking along, and then boom, dead.
I'm glad
I think it might have had a little impact, but certainly as the Friday the 13th bit went on before they went away from the summer camp, and then when we actually had the hitcher and the hitchhiker, I'm pretty sure that kind of put the
damper on it.
Yeah, I'll say the adventurous folks, but because there's always people who need to hitchhike. So they're like,
well, they made it illegal at some point. I don't think it was illegal before, but I think they made it illegal at a certain point to stop and pick people up and for you to stand there with your thumb out, like on the highway.
On a lot, interstates you can't be on those at all, and a lot of state highways they've just nope, can't stop and pick up. And then of course, if you drive through Arizona, I love it that they have the signs: don't pick up hitchhikers; they could be escaped inmates.
Yeah, we have that here in Oklahoma too. Yeah,
you guys got there too. Okay.
I'm glad you bring up the Annie character, the one who's trying to be the cook, right? Because this movie kind of follows that Psycho mold in a little bit, where you think Annie might be one of the main characters, right?
Right.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
And then she gets killed off pretty. Yeah.
After about
15
minutes.
I like Annie too.
Yeah, Annie's very charming. You spend a lot of time with her at the beginning. Right. You grow to like her a lot, and then just right away,
she's poor Annie. Yeah. This is kind of Psycho inverted because the son is dead and the mother's doing the killing. So
it reminds me of that early scene where Annie she gets into town and she walks into the cafe and they all kind of stop and she's like, "Hey, you guys know where Crystal Lake is?" And they're all just like, "What the fuck?" and then the crazy old man comes out and everybody's like, "God damn it, Ralph! Shut up, Ralph!" And he's like, "It's got a death curse."
Yeah, they killed him too early in part.
God bless Ralph. Yeah, he tried
that scene actually. It reminded me of the folks in Amityville and Jaws.
Yeah,
just a whole building full of people. You're like, these aren't extras. in the term of, hey, I'm an extra. They're just people are like, yeah, whatever. I'll sit here as long as I get my eggs.
Oh God, that's like when we shot Revenge of Zoe. We had just people. I mean, I'd be shooting 2 actors up against the wall. I want a comic book. He'd just walk right into frame to get his comic book. Cut. One guy wouldn't move. We needed to shoot in this one area, and he wouldn't move. So I just walked up to him with a release and sign this. You're in the movie. He was like, "What? Oh, okay, sure." And then we just shot with him in the background because couldn't fucking wait anymore. But sort of the same thing.
It's funny, but one of the
locals
in that scene like you're talking about, the one guy, the big guy with the mop, he's in Zapped, he's in the Warriors. Yeah, he pops up in also little B movies, the character actor. So
he's one of those. He's one of those guys with a great face. You put him in the background, and you're like, he's got that great face.
It took me years later, and then it was like, wait a minute, that's the same guy that's in this. Head explodes.
But I tipped my bottle. Is Mama Voorhees in that scene in the cafe? No. Because that would have been a great lead-in.
She wanted to bury her in the background would have been really smart.
And Sean Cunningham was like, "Yeah, we don't want to give a clue." And Betsy Palmer's like, "Can I be earlier?" And he's like, "No, we don't want them to figure it out." And so it was deliberate, apparently, from the interviews.
I've always used this as an example of how, if any one of us were to write a script and pull this Agatha Christie last second. It was the dude in the back of the caboose who we haven't seen till just now. If we could get somebody to read the whole thing from front to back, they would send it back and say, absolutely not. Do you not know the tenets of story writing for this, the suspense, the horror, the bringing the people in? And I think for me, I have an adoration for this film because there's so many errors in proper structure. But, so I saw this in the movie theater when it came out. So I was like, what was I? I was 10. I snuck into the movie theater and I didn't know any of that at the time. I would have eaten up anything. And I think the creepy factor was, I think this did so well in that the lack of nudity in this one in particular, because I've seen a bunch of horror stuff before that, and it's just we watched a documentary, blood, boobs, and beast. Those are the three things that lock down a successful horror film.
Sure.
The whole thing of I hadn't gone to any summer camps by then, but yeah, to have these people out there, to be in the woods in the dark, not have anything available to you, the story bits and the oh my god, these people, are they even smart enough to tie their shoes? Because at 10 years old I'm figuring things out. I'm like, well, I'm gonna fix the problem, man. Do this, right? Lights go out, okay, go fix this. And all these little things, and it just, I don't know, the simple fact that it didn't have anything distracting from the story, I think that was what kind of sold it to people, because a lot of films that were grindhouse level, really just topless people running around and throwing goat's blood on the wall and sheep's stomach, through the door. And I think it was just different enough because of that it really clenched people. Because a couple years later, when I got my, or not a couple years, but when I got my issue of Fangoria, and it had sneak peeks of Friday the 13th Part 2, I was like, I'm in. I don't know how it's going to work, but I'm in. This is awesome.
Well, you make a great point about, like, I was talking to Marty about this before we had you guys on, and to me, this movie only works because everybody makes really bad decisions. Like,
oh yeah,
if you and I think that the audience likes that, because they're like, don't go in there. What are you doing? Oh my God, that type of thing. Oh shit, she's going back outside. You locked yourself in the fucking house. Why would you leave at that point? Hey, look, I'm sorry, somebody's out there screaming for help, but I'm here. I mean, there's a killer on the loose. What are you going to possibly do? You know what I mean? Like, I don't know.
Yeah.
I guess it's heroic to go out there and save the person, but at the same time, it also seems really dumb. One of my favorite scenes is the snake, right? And so the snake's in the thing, and she's like, "Oh my God, there's a snake!" And they all rush in, and and she's like, "It's on the bed." And what do they all do? They fucking lift the sheet, and they just shove their faces under the fucking bed. Like, oh, where is it? It's like, dude, hey, that's a great way to get bit in the face. What are you doing? So it just seemed like they, and also I think they really killed that snake.
They did really kill that snake, and the handler was very upset about it.
I would have been too.
I think it was a baby ball python.
Yeah, because you could tell it was like, ooh, geez, that machete, that's not. Yeah.
That I think was a leftover from Cannibal Massacre.
Yeah, you're thinking of Face to Death.
No, no. There were some movies that we've seen that they were filmed down in South America, Central America, where one is Cannibal Massacre, one is Cannibal Holocaust. There are these movies that are just really stupid, don't really go in, but the big catch is, for no reason, they have pictures of the native peoples killing and skinning alligators, killing the snakes, and doing these things.
Turtle.
Just raw killing. And that was a huge thing. And I think somebody was a fan of that. and had like a closet discussion. Hey, we're going to have this snake on set, man. Whack, whack. What can they do? Let's do it.
That's terrible.
It is.
Well, I'm glad they've moved past that in filmmaking, because I also read how many kittens died in like the filming of Milo and Otis, which is this like adorable little. But I mean, you send a kitten down a river towards a bear.
My wife still claims that the horse in Neverending Story in the quicksand dies. She's like, that horse died, and the director claims that's not true, that they had two. But my wife's like, I read it, I heard it from one of the actors. The horse died. I'm like, oh, so she won't watch that movie at all. Like, I'm not watching that. She turned John Wick off 15 minutes into it because they killed the dog. She's like, I'm done. And I'm like, and I watched this.
Really
like,
kill the dog in real life, though.
But he killed 60 fucking people over that dog. It's the entire point of the movie. Like, if there's ever a reason to watch someone, that's it, because it's just revenge fantasy.
That just means she is John Wick, and it's never enough.
I guess that's true. I guess so.
We could kill them all, and it still ain't bringing my dog back. I can't watch.
Speaking of killing, the killings in this are relatively tame. The effects are good,
right?
But we do get a repeat throat slash, and like, for instance, the axe kill. Right, the axe comes in, she screams, they cut away to her falling with the axe in her head. Right. So we never actually see the axe go in, and it really struck me how far we've come in terms of like Terrifier 3, which is literally and people are throwing up, and apparently there's Danny Leone stole the rat scene from what's the movie that about Wall Street, about the serial killer who's works on Wall Street,
American Psycho.
Bateman. American Psycho, yeah.
American Psycho, yeah.
So the rat scene that they didn't put in the movie, it's in the novel. Apparently he took inspiration for his movie. So like that's where we are now with modern horror. And in 1980 we're getting these kind of like, well, we'll have to cut away for just a second to do this effect.
And we watched the uncut version, which has a couple extra seconds of those shots.
Yeah.
Like, Savini was explaining why you see the axe hit the lamp first. It's to give it a feeling like it has weight, like it hits it, so it feels solid. So then when you see the styrofoam piece attached to her face, it feels like thunk,
Oh, it's okay, that sells it. That makes sense.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
But I know what you mean. They had to be a little bit more subtle with it,
Yeah.
Yeah, I think there's even one where they don't show him getting killed, but then she swings the door open and he's been hung up on the door.
Yeah, with the arrows. Yeah.
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 Harry Crosby, Bing's son.
Wow.
Yeah.
Strangely enough, in this film. Yeah.
I did not know that.
Yeah.
I didn't either. That's insane. My favorite kill out of any of the whole franchise is the kid in the wheelchair in 2.
Oh.
Yeah.
Machete across the face.
Hit.
I love that so much.
Mm-hmm.
That movie, I had nightmares about that. That was the first horror movie, like Marty, that I sat all the way through, and my sisters made me sit through it. And I remember my dad waking me up in the middle of the night, wake up, and I guess I'd been screaming in my sleep, and he's like, stop letting him watch fucking horror movies.
Yeah, there was people getting injured on the set of 2, and other unspeakable horrors that I've discovered through watching bonus features on that. And it's like, oh wow, the Wild West of filmmaking, like we've discussed on this pod before, about how just there wasn't anybody paying attention, and it's amazing people did not get killed making some of these movies with the shit they pulled off. Like in this one, that scene you're talking about where he's got the arrow in his eye and he's hanging up on the door.
Yeah.
They put the wrong solution in his eye underneath the prosthetic. So when they took it off, it immediately started burning, and they had to run him to the hospital. And apparently he couldn't see out of that eye for about 6 months.
Oh,
Jesus.
Oh my God.
And he was cool with it because they were all a bunch of kids. They were all kids making this movie. It's just a bunch of kids out there making this shit. But it's just like, wow, that wouldn't, nowadays that's like scandal, but back then it was like par for the course. Like we're on a Werner Herzog film or something, like, oh, you got hurt. Oh, there you go. And he's like, then I saw the movie and it was great. But it's like, your eye was blurry for like 6 months because it's just crazy that,
Could have been Maximum Overdrive.
Yeah, we actually lost the eye.
The director of photography lost his eye shooting that movie because,
lawnmower ran over.
King wanted the blades. Yeah. He wanted to see the blades on the lawnmower spinning, and it hit a piece, and the piece hit him in the eye. And lost his fucking eye.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, this is Wild West filmmaking for sure.
It is. I mean, even now in some independent filmmaking, I mean, there are a lot of actors and cast members and everyone who are just like, I'll just do it. I'll just do the stunt, you know.
Yeah.
We talked to, I think it was Failure Boys, and they were talking about, in one scene in one of their films, they've got someone being drugged behind a van. And they were like, he was just being drugged behind a van.
Wow.
Oh, yeah, that was fun. Yeah, for Firefly.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, for Firefly. Yeah. And it's funny watching Friday the 13th that it is kind of the epitome of independent film where, we always laud, do what you got to do. But the one thing that we always draw the line at is guerrilla filming, understand what you're doing. Because we actually were, when we were in Madison, we were downtown at night and we're just walking around and there was a whole big kerfuffle. Some genius decided to put red lights on a car, dress up as a cop, get fake guns, and shoot a scene in the middle of downtown without telling anybody because they didn't want permits and stuff. Oh, no, because the police showed up and it could have gone poorly.
Very badly.
So that is our only thing is, always think about safety. But movies like this, especially back then, it's like, these guys are happy that someone handed them a check.
Yeah.
And they're like, wow, we get to do this shit. Do whatever you got to do, man. Let's get the most we can out of this budget. And, is this safe? Well, we'll find out.
Yeah.
That's not the best way to go about it.
And roll around and beat the shit out of each other. There's no stuntmen. They had to do that last fight. Oh, that was them just knocking each other around.
Yeah. Makes me think of Night Riders, like all that motorcycle work they had to do, and all that, all the stuff, having to hit each other. I'm sure people got injured.
Oh, they had to.
Oh, there were plenty. Yeah, they couldn't afford doubles. I love that movie. Yeah.
Oh, you and Marty are big fans of that one, huh? Right.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
That's good. My favorite shot of the movie is the bunk bed where they're on the lower bunk bed and the camera just jibs up, and then you see the dude with his throat slit laying in the top bunk. I'm like, oh, that's so good. That's so well done. I really enjoyed that.
So it's showing you the terror is up, so you don't think it's going to be below when it comes up from behind under the bed later.
Yeah, they hear the arrowhead right through Bacon's throat. Oh, and we haven't even talked about that. Kevin Bacon's in this.
Kevin Bacon?
Yeah.
Footloose is in this fucking movie.
Yeah, there's a lot of New York theater actors. Yeah, that's who's in this.
Baby Bacon. He's even got that. He's still got a little bit of that East Coast accent. He hasn't dropped it fully yet. You'll hear it in some of his line reads. You're like, oh, interesting.
Yeah, it's all New York theater actors in this film, so that's why it's such a strange cast. Yeah,
that's great.
That's how you get weird things like Harry Crosby and
right. And he's good. Kevin Bacon's good in this film.
Yeah. I feel like the director did a great job of making everyone feel like a caricature of someone that you might know, like the smart ass kid who shoots the arrow next to the girl, the pretty girl who doesn't want anything to do with this, the responsible girl who's trying to take care of things, the good looking dude, Kevin Bacon, it just seemed like everybody had their own, like, you're like, I kind of know somebody like that. Oh, I kind of know somebody like that.
Yeah, I mean, I wonder if it's one of the first, one of the first sort of films like this that really does nail in all of those tropes that you see in later horror films.
It seems to be laying them out, yeah.
Yeah. I would agree with that. I don't know if it's the first. I mean, but it's like I said, like you guys said, there's a reason that this thing was a prototype for a lot of stuff that came afterwards, right? Like it's just got something to it. I'd like to point out that Meatballs is released the year before this,
right?
Which I think has something to do with the success of this movie. It's the same thing, only people are dying.
We're gonna take Halloween out of the suburbs,
and there's no kids.
Camp.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We're going to go rural again. Texas Chainsaw is out in the middle of nowhere. We're going to take that, put it in suburbs, call it Halloween. Now we're going to take it, put it back in the forest again, and now we've got Friday the 13th. They keep
what was popular last year? Meatballs. Let's take Halloween and put it in summer camp. Perfect. All right,
there we go. I do remember watching this the first few times after the first time I saw it. The suspense, like, are there actually going to be kids in this at some point?
Right.
Because
are the kids ever coming?
Well, yeah, we don't know. Is it going to be like Meatballs is like a whole week long thing, right? Everything's going on. This is one night, and you don't know that going in. So it's like they're going to get this thing ready for kids. These things are happening. It's like, oh my God, is the owner one of those guys who's going to open this up anyway, and just be like, well, the killing's done. They got it out of their system. Let's bring the kids in.
Gotta be safe now. Everybody's dead.
Yeah.
Except till part 6, till the kids show up and then you resurrect Jason. So.
Oh, that's right. That's the one with Corey, isn't it? Isn't it?
That's it's a Tom
5.
Matthews one actually. Yeah, it's a 6. They get so confused, but
Corey was, I think,
Corey's in one of them.
5, the New Blood,
and then he's
Corey's
at the very beginning of 5 in the flashback. And then it's suddenly now he's an adult and he's going to the mental asylum because the traumatic events of Jason have driven him crazy. And maybe he's the one killing people this time. They go back to the whodunit in part 5. And then in part 6, Jason becomes Frankenstein, right? He gets struck by lightning and he comes back to life. And then we start getting really ridiculous. So
I think my favorite scene out of all of them is Jason Takes Manhattan. And there's 2 things. One, it was the first time that we learned Jason could teleport because he's just doing the slow walk that he got famous for. And we see the actors run what had to be like 6 New York blocks, right? They go up 5 flights of stairs and Jason's right there waiting for him. Smack! But my favorite one is when some street guy starts giving him lip and Jason pulls the mask off. I love that. I'm like, don't stab him, don't hack him, just go, have a look, sir. And move on.
It is almost like Jason is a ghost in part 8 that takes Manhattan because he's got more of a spectral type of, like, he pops up here and there. Maybe the next time I watch that, I'll think of it that way. Maybe it'll make more sense.
Yeah.
That he's just a spirit in that one.
I like the old man, the crazy old man shows back up. Get out of here, you crazy kid. What are you doing here? Screw you, old man. But it sort of takes away from the sinister message and delivery when he gets on a bicycle and pedals off. Like, I don't know why.
I always thought that was creepy when I was a kid. Yeah.
Like, it just deflate. For me, it was just like, what the fuck? Why is he on a bicycle? Like,
well, at least it wasn't a Jeep.
Yeah, that's right. Should have put him in one of those green Jeeps.
You should have just started walking away, just turn around to flip him off every now and then and keep hollering at him as he disappeared into the distance. That's what I would have done.
Yeah, when I was a kid, Crazy Ralph was as creepy as anything else in the movie to me, if not more. The bike kind of added to it. Like, I was going to say, I remember this world. You remember when the world looked like this movie, right? That's one of the weird things about going back and looking at this. It's like, wow, that's
how it used to look, all right. One of my favorite lines in the movie is, "I told you to sit on it, Tonto," which is from the police officer. Can it, Cochise, and then Colombian Gold, man, he keeps thinking that they're smoking weed, and then I told you to sit on it, Tonto, which made me laugh because it's just stupid.
Yeah, they didn't want the cops to go out there at all, and the writer, because he wanted it to be where they were cut off completely from help from the adults. And so this is like showing all the cops are right there, but of course, obviously, they are cut off from them. Talking about tropes again, a lot of people think this one starts the whole if the virgin survives and if you do drugs, you die. But it's really like we don't see that because Alice had a relationship with Mr. Christie and she's smoking pot. The writers and the director kind of described it more of, we weren't trying to do a moralistic thing. It was more like, you're getting killed for no reason, and that's scary because you just happen to be there doing your thing. And then as these movies continued, it started to turn more into the tropey.
Last girl standing, and she was always the one who showed up in a big heavy sweater and everything but a chastity belt.
Is that why she's wearing a sweater at the beginning of Scream? I think Drew Barrymore's wearing a
she's
sweater.
supposed to be Mrs. Voorhees.
Yeah, I think, yeah.
She got that question wrong, too. So
that's true.
Speaking of tropes, I want to jump back to the wild old man.
Sure.
Now, I'm sure there might have been something previous, but this is the first time I remember like some just random psycho dude doing his Armageddon speech or shouting. After this film, that shows up in so many other horror movies.
Yeah, my first thought is Poltergeist. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. The Seer.
Which is like, I think Poltergeist is literally like the next year.
Like 2 years, but yeah, pretty close.
Like 81 or 82, something like that. Yeah. Yeah.
And that's Toby again.
So many tropes in this movie. I mean, it really spawned. And I think that's why, like what you were saying earlier, when people point back to it and go, this is sort of seminal. This is where a lot of this stuff started. It's because you guys all took it and, extrapolated from it and made more stuff from it. That's why.
Yeah.
It worked. I met Adrienne King a few years ago at one of the cons. She was one of the most nicest and gracious horror celebs I've ever met. She stood there and talked to me and all my friends for like a good 10 minutes, telling us various stories. She was like, "Oh, this ring I have is the ring I was wearing when I got pulled into the lake," and so she was just really into it and really nice. So if you ever get a chance, she's a good one to talk to.
They don't ever explain why Jason, because like even in the flashback and especially at the end when he jumps up and you get the close up, he's all fucked up. He's not just a normal looking kid.
No,
like this isn't just some like kid
different.
Yeah,
they hint at him being like he was killed or ignored, because or he wasn't killed, but he was ignored because he was, like disabled in some way. Is what they're hinting at.
Okay.
In the film.
Well, so I can talk to this because this was a huge article in Fangoria where the unspoken, and I think it was mentioned once and they cut it, but Jason was supposed to have had Down syndrome, and he should not have been out on the lake. Now, the scene in part 2 where he's wearing the canvas mask and they pull it off and he ends up coming through the window. They actually did, if you look closely at the stills, they did craft the makeup to look like he had mild, I don't know what the word is I'm looking at, features.
Like disfigurement.
Of Down syndrome. Yeah, but then they added the whole, goofy, he's been at the bottom of the lake kind of thing. But that was the thing is, it was supposed to make his death more tragic. What's
That's
more
why
innocent
Mama
than
Voorhees
somebody
is so mad and bent on revenge.
But also if it's, I mean, I see that, but it's also like this thing where it's like, well, you're killing them for the wrong reasons because your kid shouldn't have been out there in the first place, right? Like, they should have been watching him, but he shouldn't have been out there. Like, why did you let him go?
Right?
So it's almost like she has a certain amount of responsibility in it or something. I don't know. Maybe I'm reading too much into it.
All the bonus features I watched. Go ahead.
Oh no, go ahead.
All the bonus stuff I watched, it seemed like everybody was trying to take credit for the Carrie ending. Oh, that was my idea to come up with this, and that was my idea to do this. So a lot of the stories get mixed up, but one of the consensus was Victor Miller, the screenwriter, was like, I never wrote Jason to be a deformed child. That surprised me when I saw the movie. And then Betsy Palmer, when she showed up, she immediately went to Savini to get her head mold done. And so he's showing her pictures of some of the other work. And she goes through and she's all, who's this? And he's like, oh, that's your son, Jason. What? Oh, yeah, I made him a mongoloid. I didn't know this. And then she and went, that makes it more tragic. And so she started building that into her backstory and stuff. So it is kind of interesting how that all. But you always take your ideas from, you never know who.
But they never really, truly define it in the film. It's kind of hinted at and hand waved at a bit. Right. And you're sort of left to fill in the blanks on your own of like, oh, this wasn't just a normal kid. There's something going on with him.
And here they thought this movie wasn't going to do anything, and their Manny's Orphans Bad News Bears ripoff was going to become a successful TV show. That was going to be their hit. So you never know. You never know.
I think, you know what, I would equate the original Friday the 13th. I would compare it to Star Wars, as it's the ultimate B movie of horror. Star Wars had so little interest, and no one realizes it was only ever a B movie. The studio's like, here's a little bit of money. Yes, shut up. So quickly. I mean, they never had Lucas sign anything. They never put anything in the contracts. That's why George Lucas is the richest man in the universe, because everything Star Wars goes 100% to him. Studios never got anything off of that.
Well, it did until he sold it.
Well, until he sold it. But I think Friday the 13th is that kind of thing. They're just like, do whatever. And boom, it pops out as this just right time, right place. If Star Wars had been a year earlier or a year later, I don't think it would have, because we were just coming off of like Space 1999 and Logan's Run and them trying a series and all this stuff.
It's just the first
unfortunately,
it's just the first like dirty sci-fi you'd ever seen, right? Like Star Wars was like, the Rebels were dirty and their stuff was broken and analog, and the Empire was gorgeous and clean, and science fiction hadn't really done a lot of that.
Yeah. And so they have Friday the 13th. And what I find funny, number one, we're just talking about, they had all these things that were going on, but they never bothered to put it in the movie and to let us know. But to capitalize on it, I don't know if you guys have given the Friday the 13th, the series.
Oh yeah, I remember that show. Yeah.
Oh God, I remember that shit. Yes.
Yeah, the haunted antiques.
Yes, it's like a team, right? Like the guy who owns the antique store and the guy in the girl who worked for him, or something like that.
It was a brother and sister, and their uncle.
Yes.
Let all this devil-infested shit out into the universe, and they're trying to go get it. So every episode's trying to get this thing that screws everyone up. But it's funny, people watched it. I tuned in because it was Friday the 13th.
Right.
And by that time, we had cemented its place in history. It's like, oh, even when I looked at it, I'm like, well, there's no Jason. There's no butchering going on.
This is Voorhees. What the hell's going on here?
Yeah, they
it came on.
Oh, go ahead.
Oh, sorry. It came on TV, like a week or so ago. And we leave the TV on for our dog because he watches TV. And it was on whatever channel was playing. And I was like, oh, what is this? Because Jim, started watching it a little bit. He goes, oh, it's Friday the 13th. And I'm like, no, it isn't. What are you talking about?
No, it is. It's not the one you think is.
Right.
It's like putting out something called Godzilla, and Godzilla's not in it. That's the whole Halloween 3 thing. Like, where's Michael Myers? How was this Halloween?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. But yet people love that one. There is a group of people that swear that's the best Halloween out of them all.
Well, there's the people who like Troll 2 and think that's one of the best movies ever made, too. So,
same with The Room. In fact, I think I'm talking to two of them.
The Room is a masterpiece.
Or you're using my quote?
Yeah.
It's a masterpiece of some kind.
There's so much. Ordered some mugs from Tommy Wisso's website with the "You're tearing me apart, Lisa" little thing on them.
Did you ever see the Adult Swim screening of that they showed? So Adult Swim showed The Room in its entirety, uncut.
Really?
Uncut on Adult Swim.
Oh.
And at one point, you've got the early on sex scene. At one point, it's like half of the screen is just black. They've blacked out half the screen. And even after the sex scene, they basically black out the entire screen except for one small square pixel in the top right corner. Like they're just like, this movie's so trash, we're not even going to show you this scene. And they did that throughout the movie, kind of riffing it in their own weird way. It was glorious.
Like, don't worry, you're not missing anything.
You're not missing a damn thing. In fact, this is funnier. What we're doing to it is funnier than what you're going to be seeing.
Yeah. Riff Tracks killed it for their riff.
They crushed that movie.
Yes.
Like a bug.
Yeah.
So there's a Riff Tracks for Halloween, but not a Riff Tracks for Friday the 13th. So maybe they'll have to get on that.
That seems like a real miss on their part. That seems like an easy one to riff too. Speaking of which, I'd like to circle back to a couple things real quick, just to make a couple comments. Okay, we got Strip Monopoly. Fine, But at one point, Strip Monopoly ends, and the girl goes, "Well, I guess that's the end. To be continued tomorrow," and leaves her clothes in the living room, grabs a fucking poncho, and just goes to her cabin, where she proceeds to wear the poncho while she's brushing her fucking teeth. Like, yeah, this is the way you do it. I'm going to do my Katharine Hepburn impression, and then I'm going to brush my teeth in my poncho. And then later on, you're like, hey, what'd you do with the poncho? Because it's gone now, and she's in her nightgown. And then she proceeds to run out into the fucking rain in her nightgown. Where these costumes are backwards. Yeah. What is going on? Anyway, I found that hilarious, and I had to point it out. Yeah.
So it goes back to that all wrong decisions.
Yeah, exactly. And this is not like there are horror movies or movies that I've told Marty the entire movie, the premise of the movie relies on these people being the dumbest version of human beings you've ever seen in your entire life, right? They're just fucking stupid. This is not that. These kids are capable. They get the generator going. When he checks it for gas, he knows how to check it for gas. He knows to dip the stick in there and check the level.
There's a level of realism in there.
There's a level of capability there. They're capable people, right? But they just don't make good decisions because they're just oblivious, especially at the end when it's just the two of them, right? It's just the two of them. You haven't seen your buddies in God knows how fucking long. You're wondering what to do. And he's like, why don't you just lay down on the couch and go to sleep? I'll go wander around. The fuck? What? And she does. She's like, yeah, I think you'd never be really good right now.
I think it's happened, right?
I know. It's yeah. I want to point out one other thing. They did a great thing with lighting. They got those Coleman gas lamps in particular, candle and Coleman gas lamps, and you can see them switching lighting sources off and rotating lighting sources and dimming lighting sources as these lamps are moving and the candles. I mean, I thought it was a really excellent production touch.
That was something
to really sell it.
I thought
it was really well fucking done. Yeah,
exactly. I was watching it and I thought, do they even know how fucking good they did this?
Yeah,
because they really walk in and it just very slowly melded. Where even today, someone will walk in, they'll light a lamp, and I'm like, where the fuck is that light coming from? The lamp is below his chin. Why is it 45 degrees from his right temple? You know, they did that really well. I like also the fact that they relied heavily on those shit lamps at every summer camp that just hang by the cord, that have the symbol reflector on it. They managed to keep that feel all the way through. When it was dark, there were very few instances where they're out wandering around where it was just spotlights, you know, on everything.
Yeah. There's, in fact, the only bad lighting I saw was when they had to simulate a lightning strike on Kevin Bacon, and you could tell they were just flashing an incandescent on him or a very bright light. It didn't really set because it wasn't a whole big, crash like it should have been, right? But other than that, I mean, especially when it came to moving the light sources around, they did such a fantastic job. I don't understand, and this is, I think, another thing with horror movies, right? Where back in the day when this type of movie was made, you would go, well, I understand why you wouldn't, like she knocks Mrs. Voorhees out, kill her, be done with it, tie her up.
Yeah.
And what'd she do? She runs, right? And back in the 80s, you go, yeah, you're scared to death, you run. Now you're like, no, you finish her. I've seen enough horror movies now. You fucking finish her.
Yeah.
Right?
They even put that in horror movies now. Don't you watch any movies? Kill that bitch.
Exactly.
We have to wait till Jason Lives Part 6 for the series to get meta, where there's a line like, I've seen enough horror movies to know that a guy standing in the road is never a good thing, and the woman starts backing up. And it's like, now the movie's becoming self-aware.
Yes.
But back then, it was in shock. And so she's running away.
Yeah, that last fight with Mrs. Voorhees is like a WWE cage match. She just fucking, she's like the Undertaker. She just keeps getting up. Like no matter how many times you choke slam her, she's fucking getting up, coming after you. Almost kind of like Jason in the next series of movies, Yes.
And apparently the casting of Betsy Palmer would be like if you put Katie Couric in this movie nowadays, you'd be like, what? You're not you. You're like a wholesome person. And so that was the big shock at the time.
That's hilarious. Did you guys catch the man hands during the decapitation?
Oh yeah, it's
the hands that come up are just hairy as hell.
It's Savini's assistant with the very knuckles.
So in part 3 is where someone ends up taking a dive out of the barn, on the top level of a barn, the loft.
Yeah,
I believe. And if you look at that, it's the same thing. That's the scene that they've made fun of so many times, that the dude didn't shave his mustache. He wasn't going to do it. So they tried to put some makeup on it. But yeah, it's this big, hairy, steel-jawed, furry-lipped dude with a blonde wig falling out, as Jason's coming up to the... You do what you can,
You do what you can with what you have.
Right.
Exactly.
Just trying to get it finished.
Yep.
Well, overall, I'm going to give it a 3 out of 5. I do like it a little more than that, but I can't really justify giving it more. Like, as a horror classic of the slasher genre, probably more of a 4. But overall, I'm going to say a 3.
Just as a film, yeah.
I do enjoy it. It's very nostalgia for me.
What about you, Jim?
You know what? Same thing as Marty. I would give it a 3. It has a lot of, in here in my heart feeling. But like I said, there's so many like things that were just glazed over. The writing, the story structure, the whole thing, just kind of pop surprise. We were talking about it. Thought maybe, it's almost as if they're like, okay, let's start filming and let's just see how it goes. Almost. So I would give it a 3 because it had some good moments to it, and it's still fun.
Danny?
I'm gonna have to give it a 2 because I have a lot of affection for this movie, but I cannot get past the fact that it is structured as a whodunit, and there's no possible way for me to figure out whodunit, and that feels like a personal, it's personal.
I'm going to go right in the middle, 2.5.
Okay.
I think the filmmaking's good. I think they did some tropes that people, we talked about, grabbed onto and used for years. But I agree with the structure of plot, and it's really weirdly written. Some things, just like I said, rushing out into the rain in a night dress when you've just been walking around for 10 minutes in a fucking poncho is just like, what? And a few other things like that. But for the most part, and I'll say this, I would rather watch 2. If you gave me the option of 1 or 2, I'm like, put 2 in. We'll watch 2. I'll watch 2 with you over and over again. 1, I'm probably not going to watch that often. It's worth a watch and maybe worth a relook every now and then, but it's not something that I'm going to put on my shelf and pull down and put in the VCR.
Right.
The VCR, Jesus. The Blu-ray player.
Well, that's how we did watch this. 3 movies on one tape at the 6-hour speed.
Ooh, I just bought a VHS copy of Night of the Comet for $3. I was really excited about that.
Oh, nice.
Speaking of VHS, we do have a VHS copy of African Queen.
Oh, do you really?
Yeah.
Oh, that's fantastic. That's great. Perfect segue.
Yeah.
Right. Look at, she just segued us right into African Queen perfectly. Jeez. It's almost like she has her own podcast.
The African Queen, a movie where things escalate very quickly. There's a war going on? Yeah, it's right there. What is the African Queen, Cliff?
The African Queen. You would ask that. And of course,
I ask the difficult questions.
You do. Okay, The African Queen. So this is directed by John Huston?
Houston. Angelica Houston's dad.
Yes. Which, by the way, she was born during the making of this.
Mm-hmm.
Let me go back to my thing here. Sorry about that. So starring Humphrey Bogart, Katharine Hepburn, written by C.S. Forrester. C.S. Forrester is known for having written the Horatio Hornblower series, amongst other things. Let's see. In World War I East Africa, a gin-swilling Canadian riverboat captain, I just love that line, a gin-swilling Canadian riverboat captain is persuaded by a straight-laced English missionary to undertake a trip up a treacherous river and use his boat to attack a German gunship. So that's your log line. Your storyline is September 1914, news reaches the colony in German East Africa that war has broken out across Europe, making British Reverend Samuel Sayer a hostile foreigner. German imperial troops burn down his mission. He is beaten and dies of fever. His well-educated, snobbish sister Rose buries him and leaves by the only transport available, which is the dilapidated river steamboat African Queen, captained by grumpy Charlie Allnut. As if a long, difficult journey without any comfort were bad enough, Rose is determined to find a way to do their part for the British war effort while avenging her brother and aims high, as God is obviously on their side, and constructs their own torpedo and uses the converted steamboat African Queen to take out a huge German warship called the Louisa, which is hard to find or reach on a giant lake. She presses Charlie, and he accepts to steam up the Ulanga, brave a German fort, raging rapids, bloodthirsty parasites, and the endlessly branching river which seems to go nowhere but impenetrable swamps. That's it.
Done. Moving on.
Done. Yeah. There you go. That's a long one.
The movie.
So during that whole thing, I was trying to capture in my head what would this movie look like if John Hughes got the script,
right?
And
first off, so here's what I think. This is still a fucking rom-com.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
This is a romantic comedy. It's just it's just wrapped in a dramatic war sort of theme. But this is about two people who can't stand each other, slowly begin to like each other, fall in love. It's even got a fucking meet cute.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
You know, when he's standing there outside the church and he's caused a problem with all the natives and they go rushing out of the church and she's playing the organ like, oh God, I hate this guy, you know?
Yeah.
It's out of my match.
It's a fucking meet cute.
They want that cigar.
Yep, they did want that cigar.
This is the opposite of Out of Africa. My first note here is, in Out of Africa, Redford really, he admonishes her character for trying to teach the Africans to be English. She's like, they have their own culture, they have their own languages, they have their own stories. I don't think we should be teaching them to be British. And in this movie, the first thing they're doing is learn my English hymns, learn my English religion.
Oh yeah.
Be English. So that really struck me. We just did Out of Africa, 3 or 4 months ago. So it's still fresh in memory. And as soon as it started, I'm like, oh, that's a completely different take.
And we also did
probably a more accurate one.
We also did Nate and Hoeys, written by John Hughes, which is
true.
Like his version.
Yeah, I listened to that.
Wanted to say
it's true.
Last week.
Because they all. Why do we keep having movies where people are getting hung? I don't know. We've barely done not even 2 seasons, and we've had at least a half dozen movies where it involves a noose at one point in the plot.
We've done 4 or 5 movies about boats already, for fuck's sake.
That's true too. Very nautical here. Yes.
See, now you got to do something on The Man Who Would Be King, because there's no noose; it's a mountainside. And I bring that up just because, like you said, it is kind of a rom-com. And The Man Who Would Be King, when I saw that, I saw that before seeing African Queen when I was young. It was the first time I seen Michael Caine, Sean Connery in kind of it's almost a buddy film, right? It's a British style buddy film, and they had their moments of comedy in the more far-stretching drama that was going on. And these were like big guys, and when African Queen. I'm like, oh, Humphrey Bogart. My grandfather was like, hey, we're going to go see a movie. What is it? African Queen. Who's in it? Humphrey Bogart. 7-year-old Jim's like, yeah, all right. I want to see Humphrey. I had never seen him like this before. And that is
all ground up.
You're used to his gangster pictures.
I am used to the gangster pictures. I am used to, this is studio-owned Humphrey Bogart. He always looks the same. He always has that same attitude. And, to a kid, he was cool as shit. Can't deny it.
Yeah.
I love seeing him on everything. And to see him in this, when he first shows up, I'm like, oh my God, it's like somebody took him out back and fucking had it over on him. He just looks, and he's sober and everything. But that whole opening scene we were talking about, I think he was like the only guy who could have really pulled it off. And the line that Danny and I were talking about when he's doing the stomach grumbling things and he's trying to make excuses, and then finally towards the end it grumbles again. He's like, there's nothing I can do about it.
Yep. Apparently, they said that Charles Lofton was first scheduled to play this movie. To play Humphrey Bogart's part. Charles Lofton. Betty Davis was going to play Katharine Hepburn's part, but she got pregnant.
Wow. Yeah, they approached her a couple of times, and then by the time she got around to being interested in doing it, they already had Katharine Hepburn lined up.
Yeah. And Hepburn's got a fucking Oscar, so what are you gonna do, right?
Yeah.
Well, speaking of Oscars, this is the only one Bogey won an Oscar for.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yep.
And well deserved.
Yeah.
Which is funny. I think this goes to the whole industry of movie making. the people that you want and you can't get may not have been the best choice.
That's very true.
Yeah, so I'll go back to Star Wars. So Al Pacino, anywhere in that movie? I mean, really, really. I know it was a far-fetched dream, but thank God.
No.
So I look at the combination.
Yeah.
William Catt as Luke Skywalker.
Right.
I know, right? The greatest American hero blows up a Death Star. Well, if he pilots the X-Wing like he flies,
Do not want.
I'm going to make it with AI.
Hard pass.
His teeth blew me away. Those teeth, man. That just, that he obviously was wearing some sort of denture plate in this movie, right? The Bogart's
Logie? Yeah.
I'm not
the buck tooth.
Sure.
Yeah.
Like,
plate or something.
They were front enamels, and there's a couple scenes where he's from the thigh doing the rabbit tooth thing, and you can kind of see where they didn't,
fascinating.
Yeah, where it wasn't like tapped in behind the other tooth because the teeth weren't perfectly straight, and I love that part too because it was almost cartoonish. He's having some problems, and every time he tries to get serious, you could see him lift his lip and pull his lower one. Well, let's just just get through this.
Well, and he had that acting habit anyways of pulling his upper lip.
Yeah,
see that sneer.
Yeah.
I feel like the Han Solo and Indy characters pulled a lot from this guy's character.
100%.
I feel like they pulled a lot. There was a lot of inspiration pulled from Charles.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, because he's this, scrappy, dirty, but smart, capable guy.
Especially with the Millennium Falcon, where it's like he's kicking it to fix it and shit. Oh, well,
yeah.
I dropped the screwdriver down there. Why don't you tear it apart, fix it? I probably should do that one of these days, but the truth is, I like to kick it.
I kind of like kicking it.
I like kicking it. And I'm just like, this fucking guy rules. Like, I love this guy.
So the
This
Empire
was for
Strikes
me.
Back as a remake of this? Wow.
I mean, there's just some echoes there to me. There's some serious echoes of Han Solo and especially Indy. Indy's, Indy's ability to get into trouble and then kind of be like, oh shit, here it comes, shooting the rapids, when they're going past the fort and he's get down. He's getting them. He's taping the thing together. It's just, God, it just feels like, how about now? Try it now. That type of shit, no. Okay. Cross over the blah, blah, blah.
I don't know how accurate it would be to say this, but it's my first impression of it seeing this. But Charlie Allnut, to me, was the first, like Walter White, Han Solo. He's the absolutely most imperfect. He is the original dark superhero that everybody failed at.
I think that's maybe where I'm coming from with this, right? Like, God, he feels so much like that character.
Yeah.
That capable, hapless guy that things happen to, but yet at the same time, he's always seeming to figure out a way to get out of it,
And there's those couple moments where you're like, God, he is actually kind of a dick too. When, especially in the beginning, when
the first time he gets drunk, and he really lets her have it, I was like, ooh, man, that's brutal.
Yeah. And I don't remember too many movies in the decades before that really showed the vulnerability. I mean, the leading man was a leading man. You didn't jack with them, unless it's, Jack Lemmon and Walter Matthau out, fucking about in a comedy. Yeah, you don't mess with them. This was, it is so refreshing to watch. It is one of my calm movies. Like when I just, at the end of the day, I just want to do jack shit. I can watch this, get immersed in it because I connect, and that's why I think everyone's desperately trying to find that right combination, to modernize, where it's pretty real. It's pretty real. The guy's got some moments, and he's a good guy, but he can be a dick at times, and this is his Achilles heel. And then the big question: is she going to fix him, or is she just going to meet him halfway? And at first, she thinks she's going to fix him when she dumps the gin overboard. I love that bit. The pain on his face is real.
Couldn't even leave me a drop, not one drop.
And he's too hungover to fight her about it. So I love that. But then even after that,
the only incongruous part of the movie to me, and and I think maybe it's just because of the way storytelling was back then, is that he didn't put up a lot of fight about the liquor being gone. We didn't see him having trouble not drinking.
Yeah.
Right.
And I feel like maybe that would have been a little, and it's quite possible it was in the story and they cut it out. There was maybe an extended scene that they cut out. But he went from, oh, God damn it, to, oh, man, nothing like a clean shave. I bet you never seen it without the beard.
Which one take he's good.
Yeah, I would have liked to have seen him kind of transition to that a little bit or something. You know what I mean?
I think the censors back then would have had a real problem with showing someone with the DTs. We've had a lot of alcoholics, and especially all the gumshoe films and stuff, and they always go away and they come back clean. I've been in jail for 6 months, and it's great, and I'm here to be your informant and all this stuff. I mean, a lot of really good story was murdered before it was even born, just because they knew they're going to go up against that wall, and it's like, oh, we can't show that. We can't show Humphrey Bogart shaking and swearing, and who wants that?
I mean, I kind of, maybe this is just how I like to read into it, but if she comes up with her idea that Alma's going to make these torpedoes and they're going to go, bomb the ship, and I think that he doesn't think that she's serious.
No, he doesn't.
Yeah.
He kind of goes along with it to a certain point. He's like, wait, you're fucking serious?
Yeah.
Oh, you meant that, huh?
You really want to do this? I mean, I kind of humored you to get us this far, but what the fuck are you talking about? Yeah.
Yeah, and the alcohol is part of that, him realizing that she is serious about it. And I think him coming the next day with the shave and going like, look, I can look clean like you too, is part of his maybe trying to like steer her away from that crazy idea that she had.
Okay, I'll go along with it.
He's like buttering her up a little bit.
Yeah, I'll go along with it to get you to agree with me. Oh, that's a good point. Mm-hmm. Okay. Now that's much more palatable. I like that.
Anyway, that's how I choose to look at it. But Katharine Hepburn in this movie, you talk about, Humphrey Bogart being dirtied up. She is, like, Jim, you said it last night. It's like casting America Ferrera's Ugly Betty.
Yeah.
Right. Katharine Hepburn in a frumpy outfit with brown hair does not actually make her less pretty, but I guess it's supposed to.
Yeah, it's just like we were talking about The Faculty on a previous episode, and that had the whole, what did he call it? She's all that syndrome, where it's like you wear the glasses and you're nerdy. Yeah. You take the glasses off and you're beautiful.
Oh my God, she's so much hotter without the glasses. How did I miss it?
It was so silly.
Jesus.
But as they go down the river and her clothes get more beat up and her hair starts coming apart, then she's more like, I think she's, that's her prettied up, I guess, in the movie.
Well, she gets softer.
She does. And she leans into his lifestyle a bit, like into his, like being, I understand being dirty is sort of, she learns how to fucking get the kettle going on the ship when he gets sick and she's driving the boat and everything. Like she leans into what's going on.
Yeah.
If you pay attention, like how they lean into their relationship.
Yeah, if you pay attention, you can see. So Katharine Hepburn has this, amazing jawline. She just has this whole facial structure that is
it's very stiff early on. It's
beautiful.
Oh yeah.
So when they had her, very stiff as as a character, but you can see where they have the shading lines of the makeup to really bring out that jawline, because physically there's a couple instances in the beginning where she turns and you can see that's not where her jaw, physics, you can't beat it, right? They didn't have special effects like that in the 50s, but that goes away as she becomes more like Charlie, as she becomes like stepping into his life, getting more into it. And that was the whole Ugly Betty thing we were talking about. Like,
they soften her.
They soften her a bit, but if the idea was to make her prettier, that's what I'm like, that was like casting America Ferrera's Ugly Betty. What the fuck are you going to do? She's beautiful. No matter what. Katharine Hepburn was and always has been beautiful. Do what you can. But yeah, the dirtier she got, the softer she got.
Yeah, I like that. I agree. Yeah, she seems much cleaner and much more likely to cut you herself.
Oh yeah.
Yes.
Right? Like, yeah. I one of the things, one of my notes was I love Bogey's entrance. The first frame of the film is him on his boat, and he's got a guy driving. He's got somebody fanning him. He's smoking a cigarette. He's smoking a cigar. He's living the life,
He almost
and I love
a Marx Brother or like George Burns with that cigar going,
Yeah, well, and I mean, it's early that Animal Crackers. They bring in Groucho in like a he's sitting in a sling, cross-legged, and he's got four tribe members carrying him on poles and shit. It's fucking great. It's great. I want to note that my dude is chugging straight gin warm out of a bottle, and a half a glass at a time. And at one point, he just dips the glass into the river. He's like, "Here, a little mixer, boom," and then he puts gin in the. I'm like, "Oh my god!"
It's like an episode.
Enjoy your dysentery, sir. Speaking of which, he and John Huston were the only people during the filming of this movie not to get sick.
Because they drank scotch the whole time.
They drank scotch, and he said, "I survived on baked beans, canned baked beans, canned asparagus, and scotch."
Yep.
And he and John Huston had boxes of it marked as medical supplies.
Right.
So nobody would fuck with it. And they said Katharine Hepburn got so sick that during one scene that they just put a bucket next to her, and she would throw up in between takes, just vomit and go, "Okay, I'm ready to go." Insane.
More of that rough filmmaking of days past.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And apparently, from what I read, Hepburn loved Africa, and Bogey hated it.
Yes.
And Bacall came with him and kind of acted like a nursemaid to a lot of people.
Yeah.
But Hepburn was like, "This is great. What's the name of that? What's the name of that? What's this?" And Bogey's like, "We're gonna fucking be here forever. Could you get her? Like, I want to go. I don't want to be here for 2 years while she figures out what everything is. Let's go. Shoot the picture. Stop telling her what things are. Roll camera." He was desperate to get out of fucking Africa. He hated it. Love it.
Well, and that's kind of like his life as he was a studio man. And we've talked about that on different things, comparing actor stuff today to back then. Even explaining to our daughter, why people did things the way they did. It's like if you were, a Humphrey Bogart, James Stewart, you did what the studio told you to, because they would make or break you. If a studio kicked you out, they would make sure no other studio would work with you. So you had to do the shit movie now and again. You had to look this way, even outside of it, there's how many stories are out there of people, these top draws, studio-owned actors, and when they go out in public, oh man, what a scam it would be if, she wasn't wearing her absolute best dress, right? This is how you go grocery shopping when you're a Hollywood star. You to the nines all the way. And, we have these two muddying it up on screen. And I think maybe, we'll never be able to ask him, but I think Humphrey probably just was like, "Fuck, man, this, we're doing half this movie in the studio and it seems pretty good. Why can't we just do all of it?"
Right. Can't we just shoot a bunch of fucking plates? We have rear projection now. I mean, and you could see it used in the movie very effectively.
Mm-hmm.
There are points where they're like, she's steering the back of the boat and he's running around in the water rapids, and I just know there's somebody right at a frame with a bucket of water. Just, "Here you go, Catherine," boom, throwing a bucket of water on her, and it always makes me laugh, but it still sells. It still works.
It does.
It's just knowing how that's made. I kind of giggle to myself like.
And that was like the hardest thing in like any movie, anytime prior to like 1967 or 8, anything having to do with water.
Mm-hmm.
Just really, there's just nothing you could do. And I learned to forgive that. It's like bad green screen. It's like, okay, you know what? You can only do so much. But yeah, those water scenes were wild. I will say one thing I love, because of so much of it being done in Africa and then in the studio in England. You can clearly see, no matter how good they edit, that they have just cut from studio shot to while they were in Africa. And because it's just the intensity of the lighting, they just didn't have it there. But you look, and I paid very close attention, like consistency. I love consistency, continuity in things. And
there's a lot of flubs in this movie.
There are, but man, did they try. Like, you look at Catherine's mud and shit on her face, and then the next scene, it's a little
continuity.
Yeah.
I forgive that, considering like I said, it was a rough shootout in Africa.
Yes.
I mean, it was fucking brutal out there, man. I mean, they had to build a raft to go alongside the boat, and they built the boat so they could take it apart in sections and stick cameras in it because they couldn't get the cameras inside that little ass boat. So that whole steam powered machine was meant to be completely lifted up and removed from the boat so they could put a camera there and shoot. So it was. And then, of course, they had another raft trailing it with lights, scrims, bounces, all the shit that they needed to actually shoot whatever they were shooting. So, I mean, God, in 51, it seems like a technical miracle almost.
Mm-hmm. I know.
Oh, yeah.
You were running electricity on a river and nobody died?
The cameras that they were using were new, and they were huge. That was part of the problem, too. I remember that. And I can't remember what they were.
Three level Technicolor cameras that they were shooting with, right?
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah, this was both of their first full color movie.
That's interesting.
So
what were you saying, Marty?
The impossibility of filmmaking is all over this thing. Not only was it, an impossible task to achieve making that movie, the movie itself is you can kind of see the impossibility of filmmaking in it. Like, you're serious? You want me to build a torpedo? Yeah, build the torpedo. That's kind of how I feel about filmmaking. It's like, go get the chairs for the scene. Cliff, I can't fit all the chairs in the car. Go get them. And then you somehow and it's kind of like, oh yeah, I see that in the movie as well.
Mm-hmm. And I liked that when he's they're explaining to the Germans about the torpedoes, and he's like, I'm actually pretty proud of the detonator I built for him.
He's like, guess what I used for it? Yeah. That's so good. One of my notes here is, first off, this is a bold ass fucking movie to make because you've got two people on camera for 90 minutes.
Oh yeah, it's two-hander for the most part.
It is a two-person fucking film. Now, yes, you have people in the beginning, and yes, you have people at the end. But right in the middle, a good solid 80 to 90 minutes is carried by these two fantastic actors who just chew the fucking scenery around each other.
It's before it's on a boat.
Yeah. I thought about Before Sunrise, and what I thought was, God, the difference between the dialogue and the acting is the dialogue and the acting in Before Sunrise is adequate. It's decent. It's good. It's even maybe pretty good. The dialogue and the acting in this is fucking phenomenal.
Well,
it's the difference in talent, in my opinion. Like, Ethan Hawke is not the actor Humphrey Bogart will ever fucking be, ever.
No.
Ethan Hogarth's Ethan's a fine actor. I'm not shitting on Ethan's work, but Humphrey in this movie in particular is like, it's amazing.
Well, this was like the pinnacle of his evolution and growth. All that gangster shit, Maltese Falling, all that in Casablanca, which, had everyone swooning and stuff. This is where he just like came through. This is, I call this Humphrey Bogart's drug addict moment. Because if you remember, like in the late 80s into the 90s, every actor was desperate to play a fucking strung out drug addict because they wanted to get on camera and show they could punch through that shit and be that kind of thing. And I think this was his moment. Because this, I mean, he won an Oscar for it, which, great. Not everyone who wins an Oscar deserves it. We won't get into that, but he's just so fucking good in it. And like you said, the conversation thing, we like Glengarry Glen Ross. Doesn't matter who you put in it. They had some great people, but what made that movie there was no action, there was no anything, dialogue. All these people being able to punch it back and forth across the table every scene. But this is two people, like you said. And I love things like that. I love that level of writing and acting and directing that come together where you're keeping me there. Like you said, 80 minutes of just these two people going at each other or talking to each other. And I just want to keep going.
Yeah. I mean, the leeches and pulling the boats to the reeds. Like that's the part where I could see somebody going, that really dragged for me. For me, I was just completely engrossed. It didn't drag for me. I just was like, fuck, because he gets out of that boat and she screams and tears all those leeches off of him. And he's just like, oh God. And then what's he do? He gets right back in the goddamn water and starts dragging that boat again.
Yep.
And it's just like, damn.
Started taking a Stand By Me, and I'm like, you might have some more leeches you might want to look for.
Yeah. My old thought too. Yeah. My old thought too.
Yeah. And then she's out there dragging it with him not long after that scene.
Yep. Yeah.
Yeah, under with him with the propeller or doing the shaft, doing the shaft.
And I love that. I love that scene too because she has this all through the movie. She has this wonderful way of just kind of making him do what she wants, and she doesn't browbeat him. She doesn't. When it comes to liquor, she does. But anything else that she wants him to do, she basically just says, "Here's the plan, get to it." And he just like is almost scared to tell her no, which I think that's just kind of like a societal type thing to a certain extent. You know, you extend courtesies to a woman back then, and okay, ma'am, yeah, sure, whatever.
Yeah.
But at the same time, you know, he didn't really understand. He thought she was bullshitting, right?
It does seem like he realizes that. Wait a minute, she kind of makes a point. I can do that. I can do that.
Yeah, especially when it comes to like repairing the prop and the prop shaft. Where she's just like, well, I guess he's like, I don't have any, and she's like, well, I saw the natives use this for fire. He's like, well, yeah, I did see that. Well, I guess you can do this. He's like, yeah, I guess I can. And then he's like, and by the end of it, he's just like, next thing you know, they're on the fucking beach banging out the shaft and putting the prop together, and his mindset is completely changed because
of the way she delivered it,
prompting it. Yeah,
you know, like
really well done,
just super positive. She's so that you know, it's not that far, darling, or it's not that hard, darling, is it? So it shouldn't be.
He's
so
like, no, I guess it isn't.
Do it? You know,
no, I guess I can.
Yeah, she takes like a butter knife to his stone walls and just very gently chips away, and he does the rest. He tears it down. He's like, yeah, why the fuck can't I do this?
Yeah, exactly.
I'm a capable person. Yeah.
Yeah. I haven't seen this movie in a while, but I remember, first off, I love bogey movies where he's not playing the gangster. Treasure of Sierra Madre, this one, you know, when he's not playing that normal gangster role is fantastic. This movie is one of the first ones I saw as a kid on the old UHF station and understood and liked. I didn't like a lot of old movies back then because they didn't move differently.
I was kind of the same way. Yeah.
But this one, like when I was like, that was really
it grabbed
good.
you, right? Like
and
like
its purpose was clear. Its
done,
intent moved. Yeah,
that one got
really well done.
That's funny.
That's something I got to remember to try and say in the podcast as advice to, you know, the new folks out there. And I'll even say it to you. Watch those old movies. Get into that group. I love this shit so much because I grew up watching fucking Lawrence Welk. My grandfather, you know, Untouchables, all this shit from when television first began, all the old movies. And that's why I know Stewart and Bogart and all this stuff. And I see everything that's been built on top of that. Like I look at Star Wars, I'm like, well, George Lucas didn't come up with any, you know, wild shit. He took a story, made it simple, put it in space. It's damsel in distress, and we don't know really anything about anybody. It's just go get her, and there's a bad guy to overcome.
With Vietnam War commentary. That's exactly what
yeah. And this African Queen still has that stuff to it, that pacing, everything. But there's just something underlying that's magical that elevated above all the rest. But I love it so much because of that pacing, because I think so much shit is out there. Like you guys do everything you can. We can see it in the movies, you know, and we don't butter people up because we have just, if you wrote and shot shit, we would call it shit, you know, because, but we love watching your work because we see what everybody's doing. We see where everybody's pulling from, and we just see where it's going in that momentum. And I can take it back to the hallmarks of filming and storytelling. And you don't have to label it indie. You don't have to label it studio. You just look at it and you're like, it works because they care. And that's kind of the thing that studios cared to a point because it was all about money. But they realized there's 50 of us making films and there's only X number of theaters. So we have to care a little bit more about the movie than the money so we can get that spot and then make the money. And you wipe that aside, I love it. It's just, to me, cinematic storytelling at its finest is when it was growing, you know, and everyone takes a piece of it.
Houston's one of its masters.
Yes, that doesn't hurt.
Yeah, it doesn't hurt at all. The only other thing I had was one interesting other piece of trivia, which was in Katharine Hepburn's autobiography. She wrote a book about the making of this film and about how they tried to basically, I think it's like the making of African Queen and how it almost killed me or something like that. And she says in the autobiography that she was shooting early on, and Houston came to her hut. He said, "Look, your performance is too rigid. You're too rigid." And he said, "Think about what did he say? He said, think about Eleanor Roosevelt and model your performance on that. She's not a really attractive woman by any means, but whenever she's in public, she carries herself well, and she has a very beaming smile." And Katharine Hepburn said, he left, and she thought about it, and she said, "That's the best piece of direction advice I've ever gotten in my entire life." And that's exactly what she did. So
awesome.
Yeah, that's an interesting little story. Also, the African Queen is in Key Largo, Florida. You can visit it if you want to make it down there.
Yeah.
Yeah, I did learn that looking. I was looking up stuff last time. Like, hey, you can go visit the African Queen.
Yeah.
One of the things I really love about this movie, and I think the one thing that I've carried through into other movies about, like, I mean, it carried through into Star Wars. It carried through into, like any movie where there's someone and he's got a ship. And he loves his ship. His ship is his everything. It's his first relationship.
It's
right?
almost like a character of itself. Mm-hmm. It's almost like
Yeah, and this boat is a character in itself in this movie, and that, like, I haven't seen any other older movies that have that included in it. It doesn't mean there aren't any. I just haven't seen them.
That's why I keep saying this thing pulls from the Millennium Falcon and Han Solo and all that stuff. And Indy, it's just like, it feels like they just really leaned on that.
Yeah, I mean, he talks about the Queen like she's, his
she is a
first
character.
lady. Yeah.
Yeah.
And then, as the more Katharine Hepburn's character the more Rosie gets to know her, the more Rosie is attached to her as well.
So jumping back into Star Wars, see here, so they didn't do a lot of that in Star Wars. Empire Strikes Back is where they did the Millennium Falcon as a character.
More comedy.
Yeah. And when the prop warehouse burnt down and they lost the entire Falcon and all the interiors, if you remember Return of the Jedi, they only had a matte painting of it and they only ever did the cockpit. And they always had the cockpit door closed except for one quick scene where it's shut because they only built 8 feet and that was it. I love I love boats, and
me too.
That's a draw to this is, it is that connection. It is understanding when someone's at sea with this boat, it is a living being. It's that whole thing. It's like a good relationship. If you're good to her, she's going to be good to you. If you trust in her, she will deliver to you. Trust the process. Right. And yeah, I loved that he just kind of did that right up into the end. And I thought it was brilliant where it shifted. Because if that boat had blown up within the first 20 minutes of the film, he'd have lost his shit. We'd never see him again. He'd run screaming into the jungle, and that's it for Charlie. He didn't care. It's like she did her bit. The old girl is down, and now he's got Rose.
Well,
that's the
that
woman
moment,
who she's been there for him. She's delivered, and when he trusted in the process, she got him going.
Well, there's that beautiful moment towards the end when they're about to take the boat to the ship that they're trying to blow up. They can't remember the name of. And Catherine to the Louisiana. And Rosie goes, "Let's clean up the Queen. Let's make her look good." Yeah.
I love it.
I
love it.
Oh.
I love it. I one of my notes is, God, I love this movie. Even with Robert Morley and his wet fucking mouth, which is just fucking gross. He's got a wet mouth. He does. He's a wet mouth actor, and I don't like it. It's gross. I don't like it, and it literally pulls a half a star off the movie for me because I have to watch him in the beginning. And he's got a wet mouth, and it's gross, and I don't like it.
Yeah, to a lesser degree, what you all were saying reminded me of Priscilla, Queen of the Desert, where that's another movie
where Priscilla takes on their whole character.
Is the name of the vehicle, and they care about the vehicle. It's obviously not as much, but it kind of was starting to draw some parallels there. I think
that's a good call.
Yeah, right.
That's a good call. I like that.
My only other real note was I'm sitting there the whole time thinking, who does Bogart remind me of? Or should I say the other way around? Maybe it's because I had the movie on my mind because we watched it not that long ago. But the cook in Texas Chainsaw Massacre is very Charlie-esque. Do you see what I'm saying? Like, even it's the teeth, and I
I
don't want to
can-
go messing around that old house. And
Yeah,
I'm like, oh
I kind
my
of see
God,
what
he
you're saying.
reminds
A little bit. There's an echo there
it's
for
just
sure.
a little thing. But it was one of those things where I'm like, that's what I'm being reminded of.
That was my other problem with Friday the 13th is I had watched fucking Texas Chainsaw like 2 months ago, and I was like, it's hard to really appreciate chicken when you've had really good steak. Where you're like, well, it's chicken, it's good chicken, like you charbroiled it well, it's seasoned well, but I just had a steak.
You
Yeah,
have to really put your mind back into all of, like, first time seeing, no influences, right? Because it takes it away from it.
I tried to.
My really only big takeaway from every time I watch this, and Marty had touched on it earlier, is the Germans. So we have this introduction. We have the introduction of Charlie, and he's doing the thing. It was almost Marx Brothers level funny when they're like, "Oh, it'll never happen here. We don't need to worry about it all that much." And they walk outside, and who comes out of the fucking woods 10 seconds later? Jump. Like, oh, the war's here. Shit. Okay.
If he hadn't told us, we wouldn't know what's going on.
Yeah.
And the Germans, I love the Germans so much in this. Now, for a long time, they were just, whatever. There's one-dimensional monsters. But now that we've had Raiders of the Lost Ark and all this stuff, you talk about, oh my God, one-dimensional.
Mm-hmm. The dude with the glasses shooting the gun. He looks like the guy with the glasses doing the fucking torturing. I was like, holy shit.
And one of
I used to call him Froggy.
Vladimir Putin. There's somebody like Putin.
The guy from Raiders with the glasses, I called him Froggy because honest to God, I always believe that's Froggy from Little Rascals. This is how he grew up.
That's hilarious. That's hilarious.
Excellent.
Oh, but to me, he's like, they were like, you remember that guy who was shooting the rifle at the African Queen? We're going to make him look like that. Find those glasses. And he just find me an actor that looks like that.
Wow, that was my uncle.
That's my uncle. That's my grandfather.
I'm going to give it a 4. That's an all-time classic. It's got its few little things. Maybe it's a little too long for me, but it's awesome. It's kind of perfect. I've always enjoyed it since I first saw it when I was like 12. Like Cliff was saying, I used to not care too much about older movies, and then that was one of the first ones that really caught my attention for whatever reason. So.
Same. That, and when I heard Spielberg watches Lawrence before he goes and makes a picture, I was like, I'm going to go watch that. And that was the one where I was like, oh my God, where the fuck have I been my entire life? Okay, it's time to go backwards. Danny, how about you?
I'm going to agree with Marty and give it a 4. This movie is like very lovely, super close to my heart. I really enjoy watching it every time.
There's not a bad viewing, is there? There's just never a bad viewing. Jim, what do you think?
I'm going to give it a 5.
Yeah.
A little bit sentiment, but this when I first saw this movie, it had nothing to do with going with my grandfather. It just had to do with, it was just the most beautiful evolution of everything I had grown up with. And since that point, I see everything that has been built on top of it, reaches back to it, references it, sponges from it, and everything. And these two amazingly talented human beings who it never fails to pull me completely out of whatever shit's going on or anything. And I just, if I'm doing it as a critic, the writing, the directing, sets, everything, I look at this and I'm like, yeah, there's a few little chub wubs there, but it's 1951, right?
It's 51,
yeah. But if I could produce something like that, I mean, where else do you do, right? Where else do you go? This was just a magnificent film all around. So 5 for me.
I'm again landing right in the middle of you two, so I'm going to go 4.5. I think it's epic. I think it's classic. I think it's all the things that we've talked about. It's one of those movies that you put on and you immediately get engrossed in, and you can't stop. You just keep watching it. You just keep watching it. You just keep watching it. I'm going to give it 4.5 because I can't get over the wet mouth.
Wet mouth.
and it's taken it away. And having said that, I've heard Casablanca. A lot of people, that's the most perfect movie ever, 5 stars. I would rather watch this over Casablanca any day of the fucking week.
Yes.
Oh yeah,
Understand that.
Any day of the week. Any day of the week. It's just a much more engaging, captivating movie than Casablanca is, in my opinion.
Casablanca is great, but it is very overhyped.
I think so too. I agree. And like I said, if you give me a bogey movie, this is probably the one I'm going to pick, or Treasures of the Sierra Madre.
Yeah. Be the same.
Well, all right, Marty, that's it. That was great.
Yeah.
Hour and 45 minutes, man. Jeez. Right on. We can talk movies.
We did it, and with very little technical blips.
That was perfect. Well,
after the fact,
like I said, it was easy to set up to be start, so it was, I'm glad it all held out.
Mm-hmm. So, is there anything you guys would like to plug? I mean, I know your podcast, obviously. But...
yeah, folks, check us out. Bravo for the B-side. You can, find it on pretty much everything that's out there for listening. You can go to our website, lordsofmisrulproductions.com. We want to make you work for it, so you got to type it all out. And everything's there. Links to the podcast, to our Observations of Earth with B.F. McGillicuddy, which is still sort of on hiatus, but the videos, links are there to YouTube. Everything. And, go back and check our episodes on these guys. And
the
interviews.
Never did get that all female cast for an interview.
We did
that's
not.
Okay, because we can do it for Love Song.
Yeah,
that's true.
We'll work it together. I'll never forget when we did have it in Bradford, running out of the hospital into the parking lot so he can get a signal.
Oh yeah.
Just pop in and talk with us.
So many technical problems during that one. It's so bad. Poor Nate. He'd be like, "Yeah, I."
Yep.
Oh, I know.
Well, we've lost him, and then he'd come back. Oh my goodness.
Yeah, I remember.
Oh shit. But yeah, guys, look, I'll say this, listeners. They have a great podcast, and what's cool about their podcast is that when they take a movie, they dig deep into it. They go scene by scene. Almost moment by moment, step by step, inch by inch, millimeter by fucking millimeter, as the old joke from Rocky Horror Picture Show. They do a great deep dive into the pictures. They also they don't pick a lot of normal stuff. So they deep dive into a lot of B-side stuff, a lot of obscure stuff, some stuff that you've heard of, Terrifier, other things like that, but also stuff that you haven't, which is really cool because they expose their audience to a lot of independent artists, some opportunities to get exposure, which is great, which is appreciated from our side, that's for sure.
Yeah.
That's what we try to do,
Yeah. Anything to help. Every movie has a lesson. That's sort of our tagline.
Well, all right, Marty, I guess that's the end of it. Yeah. My favorite line is, "God damn it, Ralph, it's got a death curse."
You're all doomed. Get out of here, man. You're all doomed.
Get out of here, Ralph. Oh, yeah. All right. Well, I guess that's it. Guys, thanks so much for coming on. We really appreciate you.
Thank you for having us. It has been great.
Thanks for having us.
See you soon.
Yeah.
Bye.
Support the show on Buzzsprout for only $3 a month. Give us a 5-star review on Spotify or the platform of your choice. And be sure to like and subscribe to our YouTube page.